So, hello everyone. I'm so honored to be here with all of you today. And this is my friend Howard. Do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself, Howard?
Yeah, I come to this a little bit differently. My first career was as a labor and employment attorney. And so everything that I did was taking calls from companies and leaders about problem employees or employee problems. And so looking at the ways to handle those situations and how we did it. And most of the time at that point, you're looking at how do you document their weaknesses? How do you document what's going wrong? And so as we started working through that, I started realizing maybe we need to work with the managers, not the employees. Same sort of thing. How do we document what they're not doing right? And then finally, I was talking to a manager and he said, I don't want to be as bad as I am. I just don't know what to do. And so it's like, oh, okay, let's stop, break it down. What strengths do you have? Let's see if we can pull those. That conversation changed the trajectory of my consulting and my coaching. And so now I get to do strengths-based coaching.
We met at an event in Italy, and he hasn't gotten rid of me since. But I'm so excited to have him here with us today, and it's so great for us as women to have male allies as well. So thank you, Howard, for being on stage. And thank you, Judy and Jen, amazing job. Earlier this morning, we were talking about being scared to speak. And I told him a story about how I botched it on stage once, and ever since I continue to make myself get on stages and bigger stages, and each time I'm just as nervous as the last. But today I'm really nervous going after you two, because two professional speakers that nail it. We are going to try to get you out of here in time for lunch. So Judy, I think, put me on the spot to do a little bit of improv. So thanks for that, Judy. But first I want to talk about the gender representation in our industry. And as we know, 77% of our industry is female. Yet, if you look at this, 84% of men hold the leadership positions in our industry. And that is what we all need to collectively change. This study done by Harvard Business Review has had men and women rank themselves on confidence at different ages. And as you can see, the red line, women rate themselves are less confident early in age, and then as they go through their careers, become more confident. But there's still a significant gap there at the beginning. And as leaders, women also rate themselves as not as good leaders early age. But the interesting piece here is that women, later in their careers, start getting more confident as leaders, where men start to get less confident as leaders.
Well, and one of the sort of conventional wisdom on that has been that lower confidence early in careers creates harder work, more dedication, more resilience that leads to better skills and ultimately more confidence. And that seems like it may hold some water, but trying to test that and really figure it out, I asked Jen and Judy this morning and just said, like, why do you think that is? And they both gave the exact same answer. Something around 40 in that time, it's like just a decision not to play small anymore, not to listen to the voices of other people, not to listen to our own voices, but to reclaim the power, and as Shelley said, to call bullshit on it. And we're not doing what we should do anymore. We're going to do what we can do in reclaiming the strengths that we already have and seeing that sense of urgency. That answer like dovetailed. It couldn't have been more perfect for what we wanted to talk about today. So thank y'all both. And the interesting thing about the strengths and the slide we just saw about how women rated themselves, when they gathered 360 evaluations of women leaders, actually on 17 of 19 traits, people rated women higher than men as leaders. And so the idea that they couldn't see the strengths that other people saw in them just highlights the idea of, or the importance of pulling out and helping people identify their own strengths.
And that's one of the things we've always done at Soundings. We have a talent platform for meetings and events. We start it with freelance staffing only. And what I always used was Clifton Strengths, which I hope all of you have taken by now, but we always use that to help match. And also we look at competency, character, performance, purpose, and when we work with our talent, all of that is kept behind the scenes in our profiles, and we are taking the jobs that we are staffing, and we are looking at those profiles and then going to the talent who we think is a good fit. And a big reason we do that is because a lot of times people, if they don't have the exact skill sets or experience that the job needs, we know they're not going to apply at the same rate men would. So, at Soundings, we really focus on helping people pull out what are their strengths, what do they have to offer, what are the transferable skills, right? And that's what we want to do with all of you today as well. So a little bit of background about Soundings. Like I said, we did talent, we match freelancers with organizations. And then a few years ago, Rachel Andrews, who's in the room and an award winner, where are you? A few years ago, Rachel called about Event Connect, and she said, we want to do something that gives back, and we want more experiential things for our attendees. And I said, okay, well, we career coach all of our freelancers, so how about we do a career coaching activation? And thank you, Rachel, for taking that risk. She said, yes, let's do it. And we tried it the first year. People really liked it. We tried the second year. It got much bigger. We did it again this year in a different format and have done it since at different conferences. But what has been really interesting about that is we've always been able to look at strengths. Then I started looking at the correlation between strengths, roles, and skill sets. And you see a lot of the same mix within the industry professionals. But then once we started career coaching, we started hearing everyone's stories. And a lot of the stories were the same. And we did it, the last one we did was 121 one-on-one appointments at PCMA convening leaders. And after that, it was when we knew, okay, there's a need for this, and we need it for our industry. And when we launched Soundings Elevate, which is our coaching services. And that is all strength-based. We start with strengths.
And the importance of, and why strengths, and why is it important to know what the strengths are? And organizations that have a strengths-based focus have 6 times more engaged employees. Productivity is higher. And even on well-being is higher for the employees in that company. For the company itself, and you can go to the next, there are better sales, better profits for the companies, and attrition, people stay. But what the real importance is on these slides, is what's personal. What is the importance for us as far as the self-awareness that comes from knowing your strengths and being able to know who you are? As Shelley said, when you are you help everybody around you be better. Having that awareness is important. Then also, just from a performance standpoint, when you know your strengths and can embrace what you're really, really good at, then you know how you add value, and you're confident in adding that value. And from a personal fulfillment role, when you're living into your strengths and in that flow, then there's a greater personal fulfillment, more alignment with purpose. And really, it comes down to ultimately knowing your strengths provides more confidence. And it provides a language and sometimes an explanation to things that we've seen our entire lives, but just didn't appreciate. And so when we look at strengths, there are 34 different strengths, and they're really themes, and the way they show up is talents. And so they're talents that we have that ultimately can be developed into strengths. And so they're themes. Not every strength shows up the same way. For some people, it's relationship-based. Some, it's task-based. The exact same thing, like, say, learner. You may learn through reading. You may learn through research. You may learn through, hearing. You may learn through doing. Different ways of doing it, but that category. All of those themes ultimately roll up into 4 domains. And so the first domain is executing. How do we get things done? Strengths that actually move the needle and get things done. And then influencing. How do we influence people? How do we make things happen in a way through influence, maybe not with authority? And then relationship building, which is huge, building close relationships that then foster both working relationships and personal, and the last being strategic thinking. And so those 4 domains are really how all of these strengths fall into. And
so this goes back into looking at the industry data. So anybody here that took the assessment as of last night, we pulled all the data collectively from the room, and this is how the strengths break down into domains. So very high on executing, less influencing, really high on relationship building, and less strategic thinking again. And when we look at it across the events industry, this is all of the data that we've captured from every event we've done, coaching as well. And as you can see, it comes out about the same. And the more we do this, the more alike we see event professionals are. And these domains are what make us really amazing at what we do. They can also hold us back at times as well. But the idea about strengths is strengths are innate. And we form our strengths at early childhood. Unless drastic things happen in our lives, they pretty much stay the same. Whether we're using them all the time is the question, but they are innate. And a little bit of a fun fact about me, I have 4 brothers, 4 sisters. I'm my mom's oldest, my dad's youngest. I'm a middle child, but I'm also an only child. So I can solve the riddle for you later if you want. But this is my strength profile, right? And my number 1 strength is individualization, which means you have the ability to see other people as individuals, right? And you can see the strengths that they have. Number 2 is command, which I also have, I'm the oldest of 5 girls. My mom had 5 girls. And command was huge, even taking care of my mother, right? So and then ideation, strategic, futuristic, all strategic strengths. And I think that is, right, when you have all these kids, you're always thinking about the future and what's next in your life when you get out of that craziness. So if you know me, this makes a lot of sense for who I am. So I want to take a second, and we'll have to shorten up the time in this a little bit. But for all of you to think about, what life experiences do you think have influenced your strengths? And a lot of this is thinking back. Maybe pick one of your strengths and think back to early childhood, and when was the first time that you realized that you had that strength? All right. So the next thing we'll go over quickly.
Yeah, and we can...
each individual strength.
Yeah, and looking at these, and you can see the heavy dominance on relationship building and executing. So the top 5 of the 6 strengths, are the ones that make planners and hospitality in events so good at what y'all do. And so it's fun to see such alignment between what you're doing, what you're good at, and the strengths that are showing up.
And what we were saying, if you look at smart women in this room and the events industry, of the top 6 strengths, 5 of them show up in both, and it stays consistent like that from a strength standpoint, an individual strength standpoint as well. So this is, again, going back to my strength profile, but showing up how it showed up in my life. I started a business that connects people with work based on their qualities, and my number 1 strength is individualization. So I get to do every day the thing that I'm naturally good at. And I own a company, command, that makes sense, but I'm also the visionary of the company. So my strategic strengths are what continue to drive us forward. So in this next activity, if everyone can take a minute and think about how your strengths relate to your career, maybe how they've related to it in the past, how it relates right now. And relating can be aligned, or maybe you're not aligned with your strengths and your role right now.
And one of the things about strengths is there are things, as Tracy said, that the talents that we have, it doesn't mean that we're not good at things that aren't really our natural strengths. And actually, we can be excellent at things that are low, our least strengths. But those are the ones that exhaust us. Those are the ones that eventually we feel like we're drowning in. And so it's when you're thinking about strengths, it's really that what do people come to you for? What naturally shows up? What have you always been good at if you kind of look through the themes and not just thinking about what are the things I'm best at or what are the things I'm worst at? Because sometimes we have strengths that we haven't developed yet, and sometimes in different chapters they rise and shrink as needed.
And going back to the beginning of the presentation when we talked about leadership and women in leadership roles in this industry, we know that there's a significant gap. So we want to also think as leaders, how are our strengths helping us, but how are they maybe hindering us, right? Or hindering our growth or other people's growth. So I'll tell you how this works for me. So I have one relationship strength, one influence strength, and then I have 3 strategic strengths. So I have 0 executing skills and strengths. In fact, my first executing strength shows up at number 13 when you look at the whole order. So as a leader, individualization is great. I get to know my team. I see them as individuals. I put them in roles that are right for them. I care about them personally. But individualization takes time and space. And when you don't have that time and space, when we're super busy, what happens is I go to command. And then all of a sudden, I'm leading with command. And when you're leading a team, that's really inconsistent for them. And that's hard for them because they don't know what to expect, you know? At any day, sometimes 2 minutes later, I could be leading in a different way. So I have to be really careful about that and monitor that piece of it. Another thing as a leader and as a founder is you're the visionary of the company, and you're always thinking ahead, like a year ahead, 2 years ahead, 5 years ahead. And you think that everyone else sees the same thing that you do when you have strategic strengths. And I often forget that they don't. So I have people working on different projects and different things, yet I haven't painted the picture well enough for them to be able to see it. So it's hard for people to follow you as a leader when they don't know where they're going. So when we look at the leadership strengths within the industry, and this is a pretty standard profile, we see a lot of the same challenges.
I'm just laughing because Tracy and I have been talking about doing this and partnering to do strengths for a long time. Execution is like below 20 for me. And so we have had the ideas in journals, we have planned this out, we have known it, and so to actually be doing it, have it live and be on stage.
We were in a meeting with the Soundings Elevate team the other day, and I said, I want to go over personas. And they said, okay, well, do you have personas for Soundings Connect? I'm like, yeah, I think I have them somewhere. So I go to look for it, and I realize, I'm like, oh, wait, Howard and I already wrote on all the personas for Soundings Elevate. Yeah. But we never used them.
No, memory not good either. And so looking at the industry strengths, really what's important here is looking at the domains. And so relationship building and executing in those top 5 or top 10 strengths come through really, really strongly, which is part of what makes the industry effective, but it also can create challenges. And so looking at some of the common challenges that come with this profile, and you can move. Work-life balance. So high executing, having very high standards for yourself and other people, taking on more work than really your calendar will allow, but not letting it go because of your standards can lead to difficulties with work-life balance.
Well, that goes back to if you look at this, having achiever, you're going to achieve no matter what. You're going to make it happen. You're going to give it all you have to do it. Responsibility, you say you're going to do it, you're going to do it. Then you throw in empathy and relator. You understand people, you feel for them. Oh, you need that done? Okay, I'll do that for you. Or yes, we'll make this change at the last minute. And relater, you want to be friends. You want to relate to the people around you, and you don't want to step on any toes or make anybody mad. So you can take on more and more work. And then as an industry, we're like, come on, you need to get a seat at the table. And most of the industry is like, I can't get out from under the table, right? Because the strengths are impacting professional growth.
Yeah. And, and this shows up also in delegation, in having the work, having those standards, and being willing and used to taking on so much work that when there is a team, it's hard to delegate, because how do you delegate and be sure that you're going to get the standards back and the quality of work that you're used to that you would do from somebody else without micromanaging and trying to lead? And that's one of the most common issues that I see in coaching. Other issue, managing relationships, both sides, because relationship building is so high. When those relationships get close and those become the priority, sometimes the task then suffers. But if the task side goes up too much, then the relationships suffer. And so looking at how to manage those relationships so that the empathy piece doesn't, either is not too low or too high. But that's this combination can create that challenge as well. Just balancing relationships and tasks for the same reasons. They're sometimes competing strengths. And when we talk about strengths where they're competing or possibly getting in the way, a lot of times people refer to that as a strength out of balance. It's not a weakness, it's a strength that we have, and in the right settings and in the right balance, it's really effective. But they can kind of be warring. And then decision making under pressure. The relationship building, that wanting to include people, to being empathetic to people's thoughts and wanting that input, but also being driven to make decisions. And so trying to be inclusive in a tight time frame and being concerned about standards can create at least challenges and frustrations and pressure on making decisions. And so with the profile of the strengths and the common challenges, now what? What do you do? How do we get out from under? How do we leverage our strengths? How do we do everything that we are actually capable of doing that's already in us that we just haven't discovered yet?
Perfect. So we're going to go over this more at lunch, but take a second and think about how your strengths might be getting in the way of your personal growth or your leadership effectiveness. And when we get to lunch, we'll get in roundtable, or we'll be in roundtables. But we can talk a little bit more about this one as well.
Yeah. No, and they're about to hit the gong on us. but really, as we go in thinking about conversations at lunch, one of the things that is fascinating about this industry for me is that I don't have any executing. And so being in the first couple meetings with people was fascinating, because I'm like, yeah, send it to me, I'll get to it. And they're like, no, we're opening up the doc right now. We're getting this done. And so, but those strengths, when there are problems or personal opportunities, we don't always flip the script. We don't always use our strengths and turn them inward and use them on ourselves. And so...
You're gonged.
Okay. Our hype girl is no longer, she's taking off the hat.
I'm just kidding. No, but thank you. We'll talk more about this at lunch, but I want to just say to everyone, elevating women starts with the woman. And so many times we're giving and giving and giving to other people, and we're taking care of others. And it's really important for all of us to focus inward and focus on ourselves, because if we aren't focusing on ourselves as individuals, we're never going to grow together.
All right, thank you.